The wild goat nebulae giving birth. Welcome back to this Alef calendar research project. In the previous videos, we noticed that the Noah narrative accurately tracks a unique conjunction and other celestial events. The ancient methodology appears to use the horizon to cross-reference recognizable shapes within the Milky Way. It seems that the latter chapters of Job also describe regions of space, encrypting the descriptions as creatures. The following verses in Job have strong poetic parallelism, rephrasing each similar thought twice. Job 39 reads, "Do you know the time when the goats of the rock bear young? Or can you mark when the deer gives birth? Can you number the months that they fulfill? Or do you know the time when they bear young? They bow down, they bring forth their young, they deliver their offspring. Their young ones are healthy, they grow strong with grain. They depart and do not return to them." Before we hunt for matching nebulae shapes, let us first look at clues provided in the narrative. We are looking for a female giving birth to their young. At the same time, we are being taunted to investigate the time of birth. The phrase to describe the animal in Hebrew is Ya'ale Selah, goats of the rock. We will take this Hebrew phrase and do a Google image search. Let us now investigate this Nubian Ibex. Are you not aware that it is not academically correct to cite and source Wikipedia for research projects? Well, this is preliminary research, which can be most definitely further refined later. So, here is an article on the Nubian Ibex. If we look closely at this animal, the male has large curved horns, and the female has shorter and slightly straighter horns. The male has a beard and the female does not. Let us look closer at the female, of which the narrative is drawing our attention to. This article has a section on Judaism, in which we find the same Job 39 reference which we are currently investigating. Do you know the time when the goats of the rock bear young? Or can you mark when the deer gives birth? This Wikipedia page provides a rough estimate as to when the goats of the rock give birth. It reads, litters of 1 or 2 kids are born between March and July, although the majority of births are synchronized in a 3 to 4 week period that peaks in late March and April. These dates are indeed spread out, yet it mentions a peak in late March and early April. Remember this for later. The article also contains a map showing this Nubian Ibex here in red, and they dwell in the lower desert regions of the Fertile Crescent. On the same map, there is another species of wild goat in the mountain regions of the Fertile Crescent. The female of this species also has 2 short horns. As for the deer, or in Hebrew, ayal, this may reference the roe deer, which dwells in most of Europe and northern Lebanon. I was curious if there was a deer or ayal that dwell in the desert regions, where the Milky Way is clear and bright. This investigation turned up the Arabian oryx. The female Arabian oryx also has horns, which are a bit longer than the female Nubian Ibex. One last thing to consider is the Hebrew parallelism, the poetic structure of the verse. The first 2 lines may simply just repeat the same thought using different words. The second description of an ayal, deer, may be just a repeated phrase of the same animal, Ya'ale Selah, the goat of the rock. We now may have enough clues to locate the nebula shape that the author may be referencing. So far, I've only been able to locate 3 nebulae shapes that resemble a mountain goat. The first 2 are found here, before the ox shape in the nebulae. Yet, these 2 are rather hard to pick out compared to the third goat of the rock. This third nebulae shape has multiple features that match the Job narrative. First, this particular shape does resemble the head of a female Nubian Ibex, or Ya'ale Salah. Second, there is a large, round, brighter nebulae just behind the head. This may be what the narrative is describing within the 4 repetitions of bearing young, giving birth, number of months fulfilled, bringing forth young, and delivering their offspring. Not only that, but look close at the hinder parts of this goat, the rock. This nebulae resembles a kid being born. Yet, there seems to be even more clues. This narrative is prompting us to consider calendar questions. Do you know the time? Can you mark when? Can you number the months? Do you know the time? The Wikipedia page provides us with a general answer as to this when question. Litters of 1 or 2 kids are born between March and July, although the majority of births are synchronized in a 3 to 4 week period that peaks in late March and early April. What happens when we set the date in Stellarium to the time of peak birthing season of this Nubian Ibex? Using the methodology explained in previous videos, namely, we set the date to -4000. We set the region to the Fertile Crescent. We set the time to sunset when the stars first appear. Putting the sun near the spring equinox. It turns out that this late March peak birthing season roughly coincides with spring equinox. Why would the author ask us calendar birthing questions around the time of spring equinox? There is another detail when we use the ancient methodology of following the sunset horizon as a transversal line to note shapes in the Milky Way nebulae. This nebulae shape of a goat bearing young appears on the horizon near the time of year when the day and night are equal length. I learned that this symbol inside Stellarium is used as a marker for spring equinox. The name for this symbol comes from the Latin word for ram, which is Aries. The ancient Greek scholars refer to it just as a horn. I can only guess that at one point in history, this circle of animal calendar was referencing this apparent ram shape and these horns. When we look again at this region resembling a mother giving birth, this hind region, which resembled a kid being born, may have been interpreted by the other nations as a caudal fin, that is, a fishtail attached to the rear half of the goat. I do need to apologize, as these Hebrew narratives reference the other nations' interpretations of the heavens as that of confusion intermingled with their idolatry. I am trying my best to stay focused on the Hebrew narratives, as they have much more detailed descriptions of the nebulae and contain some very fascinating calendar properties that I have yet to explain in future videos. I found it quite exciting when I realized the ancient narratives of the past contain secret descriptions of hidden apparent shapes in the nebulae. Reading the ancient narratives without searching the nebulae could be likened to listening to an audiobook of Where's Waldo.
Waldo.
This research project continually leaves me in awe when I realize there are actual detailed shapes to match these ancient narratives. In the next video, we will continue using the Job narrative to track down a nebulae shape that resembles a wild donkey.